I would like to begin by just acknowledging the value in your research and in your perspective, and just noting that I respect your position a lot, and I think that we have definitely learned a lot from each other in terms of how Christians should view the sensitive topic of transgenderism. And I think that there are several points that we can agree on throughout this conversation, which is proof that it has been a healthy one for us. The first, I think we both can say pretty easily that the church has pigeonholed men and women into gender roles that are, that might be sort of antiquated and rooted in its own cultural tradition rather than in biblical teaching. And I know we both provided examples of this, and I think that you're definitely right to suggest this point, and I wholeheartly agree with you that the church's teaching on this should perhaps be looked at again, because its definition of gender roles specifically is perhaps unclear and a bit outdated and unfair. So thank you for bringing that point to light, and I definitely can echo that wholeheartedly. And I think we also could both agree that the church should recognize how personal and emotional this issue is for individuals who might be, truly seeking to follow God, and might be proclaiming themselves as believers and be seeking transformation by the gospel, so that they may gain wisdom and know the Lord even deeper. And I think on whichever side of the issue you fall, and whatever your gender identity might be, that doesn't necessarily negate your desire to know the Lord. And so I think it's good that conversations like this are being had, because we can promote a sort of broader understanding of the issue, and bring to light some of the more intimate issues that we might face in this discussion due to the personal nature of the issue itself. And so the church should absolutely revisit the topic of transgenderism, since believers and non-believers alike, have different perspectives on the issue, and that does not mean anything according to, with regard to their salvation. What you think about gender identity, it's not really a question that you ask of a person when they say, hey, I have been saved, and the gospel has transformed me in my heart and is transforming me in my life and my love for God. So I just appreciate your discussion on these points, and I would agree with you. And just to reiterate some things that we might disagree on. I think it's important to note that there is a distinction between physical sex and gender identity. What might be determined biologically and physically at a person's birth is not necessarily the same as a person's gender identity, which is more related to non-physical development, which might be conditioned by cultural surroundings, and it's neither good nor bad. Gender identity just is. So I think the distinction between our physical sex and our gender identity can be made and should be made, but one does not necessarily determine or negate the other. So there is a possibility for transgender identification, that being both the conscious and the subconscious identification with a gender opposite that of a person's biological sex. And this idea is more related to an inner identity, and it's not simply an outward behavior. So some of our discussions have sort of touched on homosexuality as something that's kind of related to this issue. But I would note that homosexuality is more of an outward behavior, because it's a conscious identification with your biological sex, and you are sort of sexually pursuing a person of the same biological sex, and it's not a subconscious and a conscious identification with a biological sex that you do not possess. So since there is an inherent difference there, I think it's important for us to note that this is an inner identity issue and not just a behavioral issue that can just be rebuked or corrected. And, truthfully, there is the reality that a person's gender identity does not negate the sovereign creativity of God. He makes no mistakes in his creativity and his, bringing forth each and every single person in his own image, knowing each and every one of us intimately before we were ever born. And so I think we should tread lightly as we move forward in this conversation, just in general, so as not to imply that there has been some mistake made on the part of God as creator. And we also should recognize that since he is the creator, he is also the judge of his creation. And so this sort of just has to do with the way that we go about this conversation within the church or outside of the church, that we not be demeaning to transgender people, that we not be alienating. It will bring forth no good to be disrespectful or demeaning, or to, simply put, to be the judge of another person. And so we should uphold the Christian tenet of love. And I think that you made some good points in your conversation about this, but I think it's important to sort of caveat the idea of rebuking in love with, the reality that you should recognize the potential for your rebuke to fall upon a person's heart in a really, really negative way that ultimately can hurt their faith. But all in all, I think this has been a good conversation, and I appreciate your perspective and your weighing in on my perspective also. So thank you.